Welcome back to Dream It, Build It, Make It. I'm your host, Michael Heward, Manager of Content Marketing here at Iterable, and I'm so excited for you guys to join us today for a conversation about D2C analytics with Jeremy Horowitz, Director of Marketing at Daasity. Jeremy, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Michael. Really excited to join our awesome partner over at Iterable. Always happy to talk about marketing and data. I promise I'll try to make it interesting. I know data isn't the most sexiest topic, so hoping to have some fun today.
Yeah, I mean, our audience, they've had a lot of data through other episodes, and I think this will be a very unique take on it. So I think it's gonna land well. I'm not worried about it. So to start us off, I'd love for you to just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing at Daasity, and just give us a sense of who Jeremy is.
Yeah, sure. So pre-Daasity, I actually spent my time at a brand. So I was the e-commerce manager for a company called Lumi. We were selling Kim Kardashian's favorite selfie case and then a bunch of other mobile accessories. I ran the Shopify Plus and Amazon business there, as well as doing a whole bunch of digital marketing, emails, Messenger, SMS, paid media, a bunch of different things. After that, I left. I came to Daasity, where I'm currently director of marketing. So I spearhead everything of getting us to market, getting customers aware of us, and then all the fun things that go along with that. For anyone who isn't familiar with Daasity, we are an analytics platform for growing e-commerce brands. So if you sell on Shopify, Amazon, Salesforce Commerce Cloud, Magento, we're going to tie all of your data sources together so you have one single source of truth across how your business is performing. And that goes all the way down into ERPs, OMSs, fulfillment providers, and top of funnel marketing. So it's really fun. We work with brands who are just getting going to the brands who are doing billions of dollars a year. And it's interesting to see the trends and the differences across all of those brands.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something we're going to get into. You definitely lived and breathed e-commerce your entire career, it sounds like.
Yeah, I actually haven't, since I graduated college, got my first job, I started a company in college. After that, I've literally spent my entire career in e-commerce. And even for fun as a hobby, I host a podcast all about e-commerce marketing. So I probably to a fault really do spend too much time thinking about e-commerce.
Well, at least it's an evolving market. So you have something new pretty much every month. Well, this is a customer experience chat usually, and I love to start it off by asking my guests what they think about the customer experience from themselves as a consumer. So typically my guests, like you, are in marketing, and so you're always got that marketing hat on. I'd love to hear about your thoughts about like what makes a good customer experience for you as a consumer when you're interacting with a brand.
Yeah, so I think this is really interesting. And I've been trying to recently spend a lot more of my personal budget off of Amazon and buy directly from companies. And I think it's so different when you're buying D2C and you're buying directly from the company. And so to me, the consumer experience is everything, right? Like it's not just how does the on-site experience, the CS team respond to me getting my package, but also every ad that I see from the company when I see the ad. I think I'm probably the complete outlier here of I know how all of the guts work. So I'm like, I get really upset if like I just return an item and I'm getting hit for targeting ads on Facebook because I know that they have all the data. So I'm like, you guys can filter that out. But to me, it's really interesting. I think especially today with so many companies trying to go direct to consumer, that it truly is like customer experience is the tactical execution of your brand. Every single touch point with the customer matters, and you now can own every single touch point throughout the process. And especially as over the past probably 18 months, so many companies have shifted their efforts to be completely, or for the majority, digital. You really can track and have quick feedback loops where it's not something like, oh, this happened in store and we weren't tracking it. And so to me, when I really think about CX, it's like, I know you're tracking all of my data, so really use that to provide me the best experience possible. And I think it's really cool, the companies that can figure that out and almost like shortcut the entire experience, because I don't want to have to go wind through 16 product pages and then ask somebody for help and then go over here and then read reviews. Like I expect it all to be in one neat place for me. And it's incredible. I bought a pair of shorts about a week and a half ago that between seeing the Instagram ad from the company for the very, very first time to actually checking out using a buy now, pay later program, the whole interaction maybe happened in 5 minutes, which I don't know, probably says a lot about my buying habits, and I probably shouldn't be doing that. But like the fact that it's so quick and that the brand did such an amazing job of just streamlining the entire user experience, I didn't need to do a lot of those other things that could generally have a bad customer experience or generate a bad CSAT score because it was such an encompassing experience. The one thing that I did mess up was I didn't get any confirmation or shipment emails, and that I was like freaking out and almost canceled. But outside of that, it was a pretty near perfect experience, and I like just got them yesterday and I love them. And so it's really everything. Like I think at this point, there's no separation between marketing and customer support and all of these different teams. Like whether they're different teams internally to the customer, at least, it's all one thing and it all needs to work really well and seamlessly together.
Yeah, I like that idea of immediacy that you brought up. It's no longer the data will come in and then you can wait a few days or something like that. If it happens if it can happen within 5 minutes, it probably should happen within 5 minutes. It keeps that engagement, it keeps it going. So continue on that idea of immediacy. On the Daasity blog, it's right at the top. There's a conversation of CDP versus analytics platform, and I know this is a hot topic for you. So I'm curious, what is the difference to you between a CDP and analytics platform like Daasity, and then what's the inflection point between where you choose like one over the other?
Yeah, so probably one of my favorite quotes from our CEO, a CDP is honestly just a bad analytics platform. And what I mean by that is the main difference is that a CDP is taking your marketing and sales level data, combining it, and then telling you what to do. An analytics platform is taking all of your data across your entire company. And our philosophy, at least, is build a data warehouse so you centralize it, build a data model on top of that, and then dive into it. And so when you think about those core philosophical differences from the team actually managing it, the first big piece and the first big difference is every time you run a test, you're going to have a question. If you're relying on somebody to constantly tell you what to do, your team is just not going to develop the skill themselves of, we have an idea, we test it, we see the feedback, we ask more questions, we roll out new tests. It's more of, I'm going to rely on this other provider to tell us what they think. And most of the time it's some sort of AI model, which we can get into how effective we think that is or not. But what we find a lot is the companies that are really successful using our platform are able to dive through their data, ask those questions, and then get to that next level insight, because no external place, like not even us, is going to be able to tell a business more about their business or have more context than the internal team. And so what we find is it's really important to empower that internal team. The second piece is that a lot of analytics players and data warehousing providers will actually allow you to stream data out of your data warehouse at this point. So you can have one tool that kind of does it all, versus the CDP doesn't really have the deep data across the rest of your organization to pull in your operational data. And especially for a e-commerce business or a D2C business, like your carrier data, your inventory data, there's so many other pieces of your business that you need to have that information, even for your marketing team, right? Like you don't want your marketing team to be pushing products hard that are going to go out of stock next week because they got nothing to sell for a month. And so having that all in one place is really important. I would say the last big piece here is just a CDP is a marketing team tool, an analytics platform everyone in your organization should use. And so one of the really cool things that I hear pretty consistently from a lot of our merchants is that they refer to it as a single source of truth, because everyone in the company can rally around one data set, a couple of dashboards, a couple of different pieces, and they can all get on the same language. And I think that's so important, especially for the fast growing businesses where you're adding a lot of teams, everybody's kind of splitting off into their own areas. What we find is the brands that are super successful, they have those meetings where it's either heads of departments or cross-functional teams are like, okay, we have this one problem, we can measure this problem with this one KPI or this one piece of data or metric, and then they figure out how to work together. And when you have just your marketing team migrating out into this siloed platform that's only doing one thing and then streaming it to all of their platforms, you lose some of that good osmosis of them talking to the ops manager, of them talking to this customer support team to figure out what's going on. Because really at the end of the day, like to be successful, you need to solve those internal problems that then flip into customer opportunities.
Interesting. So is this a conversation in like getting the differentiator or the differentiation sorted out with your merchants? Is that something that you constantly have to deal with? Like, because the idea of a CDP is so commonly known, I guess you could say. So is like educating them on the difference in your opinion, or from Daastity's perspective? Is that a common thing? Is that a difficult thing? How does that work?
Yeah, so we commonly get the like, what's the difference here? And I, especially right now, spend an inordinate amount of my time creating all of the material to really help explain the difference because there are so many similarities, right? Like you are centralizing data from multiple platforms. It's really like, it's the same dish. It's just made in a completely different way from a completely different recipe. So really helping merchants understand the nuance of those recipes is really important because, I mean, let's be honest, CDPs are expensive. They usually require you to migrate out of a lot of the platforms that you're used to. And they also take a very long time to deploy. Like they're year-long contracts that are going to be probably six figures in expenses, and you're not going to get going for 3 to 6 months. Versus, at least with our platform, you can be live in 2 days, maybe a couple hours for the smaller brands where we don't have to ingest a lot of data. And as we were talking before, like speed is what matters now. The brands that make the decisions faster, that get to solve customers' problems faster, are the ones that we pretty consistently see win because they can just move faster and grow quicker, which then gives them that kind of snowball effect.
Mhm.
And so that's also kind of our other thing is we don't quite understand why CDPs have to be so expensive.
I mean, there's a lot of things in this world that I wonder why they're priced that way, but that's a conversation for a different day. But this sounds like a kind of, it sounds like a misconception of like you need this tool when there's other tools potentially there. So I'm curious, what other sorts of misconceptions have you seen in e-commerce and D2C data that you think should be just dispelled and kind of done away with?
Yeah, so I feel like there are a couple of people who definitely like come down the middle, but I would say the overwhelming majority of people are too far on opposite ends of the pendulum. And so on one side, people swing and they're just like, data driven means that the data is going to tell us how to do everything. I'm going to automate myself out of a job and I don't have to run the company anymore. And maybe one day that will become a thing, and whoever creates that, like, good for them. I'd love to invest in that idea.
Yeah.
Realistically, where we're at today, that's just not true. Like, what an analytics provider and what data should do is it should inform your team so that you're not just doing what way is the wind blowing today, and we're going to make a gut decision. It should really be like, we have ideas, we have hypothesis. How can we use data to better inform our intuition to make better guesses and better hypotheses moving forward, so that we can figure out what are those couple of key opportunities that are those just like J-curve breakaway growth opportunities or even cost savings for our company. And then I would say there's the other side, and it's surprising that they're still here, but these kind of like very old school, trust your gut, like data is cool, but we don't need it.
Yeah.
And what I would just say is, for that side, we typically find that the leadership who doesn't want to endorse a data-driven organization typically are the more political orgs that want to centralize control into a few places. We found that the companies that really want to be more flat, really want to empower the team more, are like push data and push analytics way more internally, because they just know that there's no way, like, I spent a lot of time studying psychology, and there's no way you can remember all that stuff in your head. Like, the general rule of thumb for a dashboard is you really don't want to focus on more than 3 to 5 metrics in each dashboard, because someone just can't compute and can't remember all of that at one time. And so if you have one person managing 10 different parts of your org, trying to remember all of the metrics of how everything works, don't get me wrong, there are probably some people who are way smarter than I am, who have way better memory than I do, that could do it. But for the companies that want to grow to 50, 100, 500, 5,000 people, you do need something to make that work, so that you don't have to rely on 1 or 2 people to have all of the internal knowledge for the org.
Yeah, I mean, that makes me think of every ops team I've ever worked with. Like, God bless their souls. They're dealing with so many tools and so many teams. But I really like what you brought up with the pendulum there, how there's so many different sides. Because as a content marketer, I'm always thinking, like, down the road, if they're going to try to automate this at all times, like, where's the room for creativity? Like, the creativity is where you get that connection that marketers need and consumers want. So I think that's a really cool point, that you need to be in the middle. You need to follow the data a little bit, but you can't let it handhold you your way through. So I think that's a really great point.
Yeah, exactly. And the tools that you use should take care of the, what I call like baseline work, or just more of the like more routine, not as creative work, so that the team itself can free itself to focus on those more creative things. Because no data platform, no analytics platform is going to tell you how to create the perfect, awesome thing that truly connects with customers. It might tell you the right time to send that message, but the team still needs to have that creativity, that thought process for it. And that's just what was really cool. It was like, I was talking to one of our merchants last week, and he's like, I don't spend 5 to 10 hours just building reports anymore, and now I can go work on new campaigns or new content or hire new people and like focus on that side. And I think, right, that's what we all want to be working on. We don't want to do the same boring, repetitive stuff, especially we're all marketers, right? Like we all also have a little bit of ADD. So it's like, how can we go focus, spend more of our time focusing on the creative things than, oh, I've got to go build this Excel report, or oh, I've got to go build this thing for the 19th time.
Yeah, no, I completely hear that and feel that, especially during the pandemic. If you're letting data decide everything, it's not necessarily contextualizing a huge life event. So you can kind of get led astray in that regard. But speaking of that, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, how more and more digitally native brands like Casper, Away, Bonobos, I almost forget how to pronounce it, have found their ways, like their physical stores now. So I'm curious about what are the considerations that an e-commerce brand that either has become e-commerce or started e-commerce and has gone to brick and mortar, what do they need to keep in mind for their data structures when shifting between those physical and digital channels?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So from a data infrastructure perspective today, and it really depends a lot on if you're going to go direct to consumer and retail, like open up your own stores, or if you're going to go wholesale. But just the technology infrastructure really isn't the same thing today. There's very few companies that are running on a full stack where your e-com platform is managed off of the same thing as your retail. And you just need to be prepared that it's two separate systems. And so a lot of our companies that come to us because it's such a nightmare managing their e-com store, or if they do any type of marketplaces like Amazon or Walmart, and then their retail locations. And we help them just shape that data into one place so that they can analyze it. But it's different data structures. It's different analytical windows, especially if you're in wholesale. You don't get that data for, if you're lucky, 3 to 4 weeks on the early side. It could be even later to see what your sell-through data is. And so really understanding how you need to build your system and for your team internally to properly understand, okay, we get the D2C, we get our e-com data from our site almost immediately, basically in real time. We get our marketplace data within 48 hours usually, and then we don't get our retail data for anywhere from probably 3 to 8 weeks, depending on who the retailer is and what your agreement is with them and all the other fun stuff. And so really having the systems in place where you're not over analyzing one thing that you don't have the data fast enough to make those decisions on, versus what can you make those quick turn decisions, and really working across the teams to make sure that everybody is set up, that they have that proper cadence. Because that's a really common mistake that I see is people don't look at their data the same time of the week, the same day of the week, every week consistently. And that can really throw you off, because even if you look at it one day difference, your numbers could be so off. And especially as you start doing week over week comparisons and year over year comparisons, those changes matter a lot. And so really having that consistency built in as a process internally is very, very important today. Hopefully down the road, I mean, Shopify is doing some interesting things. I would be surprised if Salesforce doesn't make a more aggressive move into the retail space. I think there will be more of a full stack kind of omni-channel infrastructure. But I mean, you still have to sell on Amazon. So there's still the piece of tying everything together. And so it's really making sure that your team knows what are the differences across all your different channels.
So you're saying I can't just conveniently look at data whenever I want, hope that it gives me the same insights?
Unfortunately, not today, not yet. I think as more massive retailers do move to digital, the infrastructure will be built, because what I don't think that any of them truly appreciate yet is the massive amount of data that they sit on and how valuable that is to the, whatever you want to call them, brands, sellers of all of those, right? Because Target, Walmart, they're all essentially just huge marketplaces. They just have called themselves their own brands. And so I think we'll eventually get to a place where it will be more integrated, but it won't happen on the timeline that probably any of us want. It'll probably take a lot longer than that.
Yeah, especially the bigger brands. There's a lot of data to collect and centralize. So shifting gears a little bit, I was looking through some of the stories on Daasity site, and I love the Who Gives a Crap brand. It's a toilet paper brand for anyone that doesn't know. I'm a sucker for a good name for a company. There's a optometrist office in San Francisco called Sight for Sore Eyes, and it's just Sight for Four Eyes. Sorry, Sight for Four Eyes. Gets me every time. Anyway, so Who Gives a Crap in your case study with them, you mentioned how they were using Google Sheets and they kind of wanted to grow and get a little bit bigger and centralize their data. And that was kind of the kick in the pants they needed. They realized that doing this in Sheets just wasn't a feasible option. So what are the common signs that you notice in talking to these brands that are maybe a little bit smaller and they're on that verge of really get on that rocket ship per se? What are some of the signs that they really need to start looking at an analytics platform or centralizing their data in general?
Yeah, who also they're one of our favorite brands. They're an awesome team to work with. Also, yeah, they sell toilet paper, have extremely cheeky, like tongue-in-cheek branding, and then also donate huge amounts of their money to charity. Like they just cross everything off the list. So typically what we find are the 2 to 3 most common reasons why brands really want to go build that data infrastructure. First is they just sell across multiple channels. So they're trying to tie between their e-com site, their marketplace sites, and their retail. And they're just, I mean, some of our brands legitimately just break Excel, like the data volume is too high that it will crash their computer. But even on the smaller side, it's just too complicated. They're trying to match back what all the data and inventory across all these channels are saying. And it's really complicated. It's too time consuming. And it's basically like we could go hire somebody to export all this data, build the reports, and then get it into some sort of dashboard or sheet for us to review, or they'll go to a tool that just automates that process for them. I'd say a second one is similar concept, but in marketing. So as brands expand from 3 to 4 marketing channels to 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 to 30 plus, it just becomes too difficult to try to track back in dashboards. Well, Facebook said that they drove 20 orders from our site and Google said that they drove 70 orders from our site, but we only had 60 orders. And how does that happen? And so they come to us to really standardize that data, and then complex analytics. So some of the out of dashboard kind of metrics that we offer are things like customer lifetime value by the first product that somebody bought, customer lifetime value by the first marketing channel, cohort analysis of when customers were subscribed, things that you can technically do in Excel, but you probably need a full-time analyst and that's all they do to do those things. And so a lot of our brands do subscriptions. A lot of our brands have large catalogs, those types of things that it just takes a long time to analyze in Excel. They can get going really quickly. And then also they just want to use that data to stream it out to enrich their marketing platforms so that they can just move faster, have better, more personalized messaging.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great way to look at operational efficiencies combined with just making sure you have that single source of truth that you mentioned. If you have too many channels, you're going to get siloed. And the customer experience starts to break down.
Yeah. And then one team starts fighting with the other team about what the data says because they want more budget.
Yeah, everyone wants more budget. I'm glad you brought up that Who Gives a Crap also donates a sizable portion of their profits. That's something we talk about a lot here is values and building a brand ethos. And so we actually kind of touched on it earlier when we were talking about contextualizing the data in someone's lifestyle. Like if there's a big life event, the data can't necessarily tell you that sometimes. So I'm curious your thoughts about how brands can toe the line between those operational efficiencies and centralizing data and developing that brand ethos. Like where does that come in? Is that what we're talking about, the data versus creativity that line, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I think it's a good framework that a lot more companies need to be asking themselves, because what we're seeing, and also just what I see generally, is a lot more brands are popping up, like Who Gives a Crap, that are doing something that's a pretty classic tried and true business model, but they're completely transitioning their branding around some sort of social good or value creation for the world to get into that business. And it's incredible to see those brands, just how quickly they can take off and how quickly they can scale. So, and it's honestly probably the hardest thing to quantify. Like how do we quantify? Is it sales? Is it margin? I think with the brands that really have figured that out well, they do one of 3 things. They either track it as a marketing cost. So they think about it as, if I was going to go spend another $100,000 in a marketing channel to do the same thing that we're doing, what would the results be? Or does this make the $100,000 that we're about to go spend in the marketing channel for the month more efficient and we can convert more? So they really think about it just like you would consider free shipping or a buy now, pay later program, or like great returns. Like it's just another tool in their tool belt to convert more customers. I think the second ones, and this is really interesting, and I probably would want to study this more to see how this pans out, is they think about it from a margin perspective. So it's really ironic that, right, they're giving away margin to do these programs, but then it's also like, how defensible are the sales for the rest of their margin? Do they need to discount? Do they need to run more promotions? Or, and what's really cool is a lot of them will do, instead of a here's 20, 30% off, we'll increase the amount that we donate for everybody who buys during this period. It's almost like a giving promotion. Yeah. And so what's really cool there is that you'll see them move away, and there's a lot of brand building and just retention. It's very interesting also to see I think this is the third piece of the retention, is that they also are going to look at a lot more long-term metrics, things like customer lifetime value, things like repurchase rates, because they understand that if they can keep their customers around and they can turn even 10, 20% of the customers that they acquire into evangelists, in the long term, it will make them way more money, even if they have to lose on the margin on every order, because it's, I mean, everybody knows the old adage, right? It's so much cheaper to retain a customer than it is to acquire a new one, that it really effectively retains customers. And I think the kind of three-part B of that also is that it tells a great story that gives them a ton of word of mouth. Right? Like, we're talking about it. I think I've talked about it with my entire family. Like, they do build a good brand, but I think when you have that story, you get a lot of free marketing out of it, just because people want to tell that narrative. And to me, that's where I see a lot of brands also break out, is that they have a very compact, easy narrative that you can share with other people. And that I think, right, there's no way to quantify word of mouth marketing, but that's another piece where maybe there isn't the data behind it, but it really helps them grow exponentially.
Yeah, those three action items are fantastic. I think that's a great way to put it for everyone listening. If you're trying to add your value to your brand, do that for sure. And the word of mouth thing is an extremely important part of that. There's one brand I love, 10 Tree. You guys are listening, I want to talk to you. They plant 10 trees or a tree or 10 trees. I forget. I think it's 10 trees for every item of clothing you buy. Like it makes me so much more willing to recommend them to someone else. Like, yeah, the clothing is great, but also like you plant some trees, and I'm not going to necessarily go do that other than the city. But
after this, we should talk. I can intro you to their team. We're big fans of them as well.
Fantastic. I've been trying that. This is why I do these things. So looking to the future, I do have one last question for you. I think we're coming up on time a little bit. We talked about how we're marketers, so we kind of look at our customer experience from the consumer side, and we're like, oh, I see what you're doing in there. Like, I know what data you've collected on me before. I think during the pandemic, a lot of people started noticing that a little bit. They now know when they're talking to their phone, people have their data, and privacy is a big issue. But I'm also curious, what sort of things that occurred to e-commerce over the pandemic do you think is going to stick around? Like, what's the outlook in the future for e-commerce and D2C brands?
Yeah, so I have three thoughts here. First one, I think there's going to be a major split in privacy. And what I mean by that is Apple is being an incredible drum to sell you way more of their own stuff, telling you that they're not going to sell your data to other people. And I think there will be a pretty sizable camp that follows that. But what I'm really, and I do some help, I advise and help some brands on the side. What's really interesting, especially for the younger customers, is that they expect you to take their data, and they expect you to create a better experience for them based on that data. And so I think there's going to be kind of two camps of I give you my data, but then I expect an incredible experience, or I don't want to give you my data, and I'm probably not going to be willing to, but I will just suffer through less targeted and worse ads. Yeah. And so I think that's going to be a really interesting split to see. Is it an iOS or an Android thing? Is it an age thing? I haven't really figured out how that will split, but I think there will be two camps there, and it will be interesting to see the differences in user experiences and the difference in how that works over time. The second thing I actually think is we're going to see a massive swing back into retail. So I know that everybody has been talking about the move to online, and with just intermittent lockdowns and all the crazy stuff that's happening everywhere, that a lot of people are just prioritizing their e-com sites and marketplaces today. But I actually think what will happen is, right, like what's weird is the beauty of the internet history to date is that it's an ever expansive landscape, and there's no real estate, and you can just keep going and going and going. And then two players aggregated 90% of the traffic on the internet, and you got to pay them exorbitant amounts of money if you want any traffic to your site. Yeah. And so sure, there might be expansive real estate, but the toll booth for the two highways you want to be on are now extremely expensive. And so what I think a lot of brands are going to realize is whether they go wholesale or whether they build their own retail sites, I think that's actually going to be a massive investment, because ironically, that's what Apple did, right? Like Apple, when they really blew up, they heavily invested in their retail locations, which is then what propelled them to have all the crazy success that they have. I think a lot of brands that started digitally native are going to figure that out and just really try to understand how to do that 2.0, like immersive experiences. And so it won't just be a really beautiful store, but a cool brand that I follow is a company called Tecovas Boots. They're a cowboy boots company out of Texas. And they have like this immersive boots where you can go try them on. There's a bar, you can get your boots shined. I think even one of the stores has like a barber. And it's just interesting, like we're not just selling you the product in store. Obviously that's how we make money, but there's other experiences in the store. That will be a big thing. And then I think the third thing is you're going to see a lot more collaborations and partnerships between brands. Going back to like everybody's freaking out about privacy. Everybody's freaking out about the acquisition costs on Facebook and Google. I think the last thing is, and something that I just see pop up more and more and more, is there's similar audiences between our two companies. How do we either do something on the marketing side, something on the product side, something on the giving side, that we can tie our companies together so that it's a easier, cheaper way than just going and paying whatever 20, 40% of our top line sales to Facebook or Google to drive more acquisition that way. And I think you'll see a lot of interesting patterns that emerge that way, especially when this is getting really deep into it, but like, especially as you think about how many aggregators and PE firms are rolling into it, where they're like, how do we create more efficiencies now that we have these portfolio of brands? And we're also just seeing a lot of cool companies that are coming out that are like a portfolio of brands is their business model. And I think there's just going to be a lot more of that kind of holistic thinking about it, because people are already just looking at how can we get different places of traffic? How can we get more creative here? And I think assuming that Facebook or Google doesn't get broken up in the next 5 years, that their size will actually be one of the greatest drivers of people finding other more creative ways of acquiring and retaining customers.
Fascinating. I love all three of those, and I think I've already seen small bits and pieces of all three, and I could see them definitely growing. I could definitely, I think it was Allbirds and Adidas. They had a similar partnership where exactly what we're talking about. Yep. It was a giving partnership. Really great stuff. This has been fantastic. I've learned an immense amount, and I imagine everyone else listening too is. I can't wait to potentially have you on again against a CDP person. Bring it on, have a CNN like battle on screen. It'd be great. But thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate you hopping on, Jeremy. If anyone has any questions, and I'm sure some people will, how can they find you?
Yeah, definitely. So easiest way to get in contact with me is jeremy@daasity.com, Daasity. I'm also on LinkedIn, Jeremy Horowitz. I try to just put out one thing of helpful piece of information or thought every day on LinkedIn. And if you want to learn more about Daasity, Daasity.com, we have a blog full of really helpful information just on even stuff of like, if you don't want to use Daasity, how to pull data out of platforms, how to think about it, how to analyze it. And yeah, I just really hope that this was helpful and I didn't ramble too much.
No, of course not. It was fantastic. I'll put those links in the description below. And for the rest of you, thanks so much for joining. We'll see you next time. Have a great one.